I point people out like, I've been telling you for 2 years to do video. You haven't done it yet. Why? You're sitting in this room trying to progress forward, but you're not listening. And at some point you have to listen.
I'm with you guys. So, you guys, this is my first series ever called The Call to Coach. My intention is to connect with the why behind some of the most amazing coaches that I've had the opportunity to meet. Whenever I'm around them, I just get so fired up and I get a lot of energy. So I want to communicate that and share that.
Okay.
So I'm with Plapp, you guys. He's an amazing coach, digital marketing expert, but has a lot of experience in radio and a huge background. He's in Kentucky, correct? Every time I'm with this guy and I see what he's doing, you guys, he has this bright, bold orange shirt that he always wears and shoes. But I just wanted to connect with you. So thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit.
Oh, thanks for having me. To say amazing, that's a compliment. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I'm curious as to how you got into this role as a coach.
It was on accident.
Yeah.
Big accident. So I've had my agency since 2008. And in 2016, I joined Billie Jean's program, which I think is where I met you. And in that process, occasionally I just would hop in the group, and there was a lot of things I noticed that people were asking questions about that to me were just basic. But it's because I had failed and succeeded many times over 8 years with it. Plus, before that, owning a business for 10 years, being in radio advertising. I had done a lot of things in business. I grew up around my dad, who's a business coach, which probably also lended it to me. And he's been an entrepreneur since my whole life, never had a boss. And so I think when I started getting involved, the first Facebook group I was ever involved in was Billie's group. And there was a lot of people coming into it that were new to the journey. And so I would just hop in there and drop something in, and next thing I know, I got 20 people messaging like, "Oh my God, that was fired." I'm like, seriously? What do you mean? It just, to me, I didn't realize, I guess I always say you don't realize what you know until you realize what others don't know. And I just took a lot for granted from my experience. And so it started with that. And then about probably 6 months after that, Billie had put up a post and said, "Hey, is anybody interested in mentoring?" Because I think what Billie saw was that he had all these people coming in that were starting marketing agencies or had already had one. And the only person in Billie's company that had ever done that was Billie. His whole team's amazing at the elements that an agency sells, landing pages, ads, all that good stuff, but none of them had ever started an agency or ran it, and so he asked for mentors. And so I put my name in the hat. I just was like, "Hey, I'll do it, whatever." And so a couple months later, he announced 5 big brothers and big sisters, and I was one of the 5, and that started it. And even then, like Michelle, who's at this event today that we're here at, when I started coaching her, to me, she was one of the first people. And there was a lot of things that it was cool to be able to see that I had the stuff that to me was useless knowledge, but to somebody else was gold mines.
Absolutely. You say that you feel like it was an accident, but do you also feel to an extent, because it's the call to coach, do you feel like there's a call to this? Do you feel like you were like, I don't know, like kind of inspired, like what was the feeling getting into that?
I think the biggest thing for me was the fact that I used to tell friends of mine this from 08 to 16. Everybody I knew in the marketing world, I knew from selling advertising with them. So we worked in radio together, worked at TV together. It's a lot different when you're selling something that a corporation's doing. That person's selling it. It's like the guy selling a car at a car dealership. He's not a mechanic, he's not an engineer, he's selling a car. And so a lot of my friends that I had nobody to lean on. So when I would go to lunch with my buddy like Doug, who's here, who's now part of my agency, for a long time wasn't. And we would go to lunch, and we couldn't have a conversation because he didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know it. I knew what he was going through, but from an agency standpoint, I didn't know it. And then when I started seeing this community with Billie's community, I liked it, started going to the events, and I just realized that there's so much I had learned over those years that I always told people, I'm an open book. Like, whatever question you got, I'll give it to you. I've failed enough to know. I mean, literally every week still, I have something pop up that I'm like, shouldn't have did that. And then today, a good example is like the call to coach is that things that you take for granted, like they always say in yard sales, like one man's trash and another man's treasure.
Right.
Well, it's the same. And then I had a lady who I coach who's got a thriving agency right now, started from scratch a year ago, and she posted today, she's like, oh my gosh, yay. I just took my first credit card payment from a client over the phone. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I used to always just get a client and then email them the agreement and then hope they filled out the forms. And it took me 2, 3, 4 weeks to track them down. And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
I've always done that. Like if it's not a local client, it's like, you're hiring us, great. Visa or MasterCard. Got it. And,
right.
and so to me, that was basic, but to her, it was just, it was cool to see her celebrate that in our group and see people hop behind her and go, oh man, and I see that, I'm like, man, what else haven't I told them? And so I guess the big thing that got me to where this is now, because when I say it was on accident, yeah, everything's meant to be, I think.
Sure.
But when I started coaching agencies, I started looking at my clients, and I'm looking like, we deal with a lot of restaurants. So my best restaurant right now is doing 30 to 40 grand a month that they 100% know comes from us. But they do 500,000 a month between their restaurants, the locations. So it's like Matt is 5 to 8% of our sales. Okay, that's cool, but if Matt goes away tomorrow, they're not going out of business. A lot of my agencies, I see that they go from 3, 4 grand a month to 15 grand a month in 6 months. And if Matt goes away, it's like their lifeline. It's like and so I saw that I was able to make a bigger impact. There's an agency in that room right now that's doing, a couple $1 million a year that was brand new 2 years ago. And so I'm like, wow, I had me, my team, the community, because it's not just me. I've brought all these like-minded people together, and they're talking. It's like when I played football in college, and a lot of times in our team, I remember Cliff, our starting free safety. I was the scrub third stringer. I watched a lot of film. I was a technician. Cliff was the athletic starter. And he would look at me on the sideline and say, Matt, when they run that motion, what do we do? And I'd say, oh, you're going to roll over, man over. Okay, cool. And then he'd get an interception. And so it was like the community of help. And so, and the same thing, I was celebrating that victory, go sideline, highlight, high five them. And same thing here, that I'm at this event, and yes, there's 20 or 30 people here that I coach that we've helped make an impact, but I see them coaching each other. And that's the cool
amazing
thing I like.
And how does that feel for you? How does that feel? It's
cool, and I would be lying if I didn't say there's a lot of frustration with coaching.
Sure.
Because what I found, and one of my goals for not a money reason, but for a, I guess, results reason, is to get my coaching program at about 5 times higher than it is right now. And the reason is the barrier to entry is too low, and I'm getting people that join my program that aren't taking it, that don't take it, they're in 5 things. And I always tell people, like, you know what? I listen to 2 people. Yeah. Chris Patterson coaches me on my business tactics, and Billie Jean coaches me on my agency. I'm not listening to 20 people. And that's how I think it should be. What I found is the frustrating part for me was I coach people I call local agencies. That you're a person that's out hitting the streets. And I have a lot of people that came into my world that are, lead gen agencies. They want to sit in their mom's basement and think they can send out 500 emails and get 500 clients, and they don't want to listen to tactics. And I'm like, no, this is how you do it. Like the last 12 years, I've done all of these items, and they led me to this point. Why are you skipping these?
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's like frustrating. The other side of it, Yeah,
and that's what I've hit a lot. I go through these spurts where I'll have these conversations with people, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, we actually, we had a call, one of my guys was on recently training one of the people, and she was on the call going through the stuff, and he's asking her these questions of a guide that we sent her. We spent about $40 to send a welcome package to our people. And it's got a guide that we spent a lot of time, and that guide is what works.
Yes.
And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, it's this. She's like, oh, hold on. It was kind of comical because the screen was framed. She walks over to a closet. And I want you to imagine somebody like throwing stuff out of a closet. And then she walked back to the camera, and we're like, and you wonder why it's not working. And then she took that guide, and now she's excelling.
Wow.
And so that's the hard part for me, is like being able to get through to people. But the cool part is when it happens. I remember when it first got big, Billy helped me do a webinar when I wrote my first book for the membership site that goes behind the book. And the book's goal was to get restaurants to realize, oh, this guy knows his stuff, join the program, and then hire us as our agency. And Billy and I had a conversation. We had it all planned out. Worked on it for a couple of weeks, did this webinar, and the goal was 100 registered. He's like, you'll get 40 attend, and you'll get 20 to 25 will buy based on what you're going to show them.
Yeah.
You got good stuff, and it's a nurtured audience. Well, I got 100 to register, like 74 showed up, and 56 bought. And of the 56, 54 were agencies. I thought they were going to be restaurants, and I had told Chris about it. I hadn't talked to Billy yet. I had told Chris, I'm like, at that point I was just coaching agencies for free. And I'm like, I just had 54 agencies spend $30,000 with me. That's cool, but they're my competitors. They're my enemy. You know, I've always, but at the same time, I know there's 500,000 restaurants out there, so it's not like we're going to hit each other, you know, in the streets, you know, like we're gangs. But I was confused by it. And so the next day, Billy calls me at like 8 a.m. and he's on the West Coast. And at first I was like, dude, what time is it there? And he's like, oh, it's like 5 a.m., but I've been up playing games all night. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, dude, congrats, man. I heard what you did. Chris told me. He texted me last night. And I'm like, well, I'm confused. They're like, what do I do? Like, I'm not a coach for agencies. And he's like, hell you're not. He's like, you're not seeing what you've been doing with our people? And I guess I had underestimated it. And so at that point, I just kind of looked at it and said, okay, my goal with this program is to show agencies exactly what we do every day. And I had a guy recently say, hey, Matt, how come you haven't sold your agency yet? You got this big coaching program. Why don't you sell your agency, focus on that? I said, because if I sell my agency and focus on that, what am I teaching them? Like, every day in the trenches, we do the same thing they do. And when I have my victories, I show it to them. When I have my losses, I show it to them. And it's just part of the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the fact that, like you said, bringing together your competitors. Yeah. Because I think for my business, like, I wouldn't have got my business to where it was had I not partnered up with my competitors. Yep. You know what I mean? So that's crazy. So tell me, how would you describe your coaching style?
Wow, coaching style.
Yeah, if there is a style. Like, I know, for example, like I used to coach basketball. So they told me, they said, oh, you're like a Phil Jackson.
You would hate my jump shot. It's terrible. Like, I have this problem, like leaning my head.
But someone told me, you're kind of like a Phil Jackson, like your demeanor and things like that. So not to say you have to box yourself into somebody, but how would you describe your style?
Probably brutally honest.
Yeah.
It's like yesterday we had the event here and there was 20 or so agencies, and I point people out like, I've been telling you for 2 years to do video. You haven't done it yet. Why? You're sitting in this room trying to progress forward, but you're not listening. And at some point, you have to listen. Like I remember talking about sports coaching back in college. And this was probably the coolest thing I ever saw in sports and like practice that element. We had a coach named Coach Rayford. He had played in the NFL for a couple years. He played in CFL in college, and he was a defensive back. He was like probably 5'8", 200 pounds. He was like just a brick wall. And this corner wouldn't do. He wasn't getting what he was supposed to do on this play. And it was basically a run play, and the corner's supposed to set the corner so it goes back. He's like, get out of here. And like, I'm in the stands. I was a senior. I was a freshman in college transferring there, so I'm in the stands watching practice with a bunch of people. And he's like, get out of the way. And he's like, hey, pretend I'm in uniform, full speed. And so they run the play, and Coach Rayford comes up and just levels this running back. He's just in street clothes, just destroys him. And the kid looked up, and he's like, did you see what I did? Like, and when you see that, you hope, okay, it was funny to see a grown man like take out somebody in a uniform. It was kind of comical. I was like cringing, but he was like, you show people that, and when you show them that, you hope that they can say, okay, he did this, this, and this. When they go this way, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, what happened there? And so that's the thing. I try to lead by example and be brutally honest. Like, I've done my calls with clients. I'll turn my phone on and record it. Tell my client, hey, I'm going live in a group. You cool? Yeah, okay. I put the whole thing on there, and they get to see exactly how I talk to a client when a client asks a question. Just brutally honest. I don't hide anything. I play my negatives. I play my positives. But I think the biggest thing is just letting them see behind the curtains. But you've got to be honest with them. I mean, there's some of them that are killing it, and they need to know. Yeah. And I call them. I try and follow the Gary V motto from a standpoint of doing things that others won't do. Sure. Gary's a little out of my league from a standpoint of energy, and I drop one F-bomb to his 40. But I like how he does things one-to-one. And I commonly, people in that room, I've probably called every one of them in the past month. I just randomly be driving, I pick my phone up and call them. They're like, what's up? And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Nothing. Am I supposed to call you? I'm like, no, I just want to see how life is. And just, I think that there's too many people out there in our business that are taking some people's money, and it's a financial gain. It's like, oh, I just got another client today, I made this much money. Well, it's not about how much you make, it's how much they make, and if they stay with you. And in 5, 10, 15 years, you can have an event with 50 to 100 people and see that this person's now has a house and didn't have a house before. And this person's got, their wife does, like one of my clients, his goal is to have his wife not work in the next year. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's figure out what you have to make financially if you're a mom to stay home with the kids.
That's amazing. So tell me what's next for you. Like, what's your, well, not even like what's tomorrow, what's tonight, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but what's your mission? Like, tell me a little bit more, like, where do you see this going for you in terms of your impact with coaching?
My goal is to get it smaller and tighter.
Okay.
I've coached about 300 people in the past couple years, and my biggest frustration has been the people that I didn't know this was out there, because I've only ever joined one program, Billie Jean's. I've not been a member of 20 programs in 20. I've never done that.
Okay.
I mean, when I was in college, I had a defensive back coach. When I was in high school, I had a track coach. I didn't have this guy, that guy, this guy. I had one person.
That's to your advantage, really, because there's so many. I mean, you say one thing, one method, and there's someone who do something completely different. You know?
That's exactly what I tell people. I'm like, it's equivalent to like getting you got financial advisor. You got 5 of them that are completely different. You know, you've got to, whoever you're with, you've got to trust they're going to take you the way, or don't be with them.
Right.
And I had a guy, I get probably weekly basis the same conversation. About a week ago, a guy reached out to me and he's like, hey, I want to buy your program. And it's a $3,000 investment basically. And I said, okay, well, tell me who you are. I didn't give him a link. I said, who are you? Why do you want to join it? And I usually drop a little voicemail in there. And so we went back and forth a couple of times. And he's like, yeah, I'm in. He listed 5 programs. And I said, well, here's what I want you to do. Fire 4 of those programs and go with one.
Yeah.
Because what you just listed to me means you've got 5 offensive coordinators. I mean, imagine if Tom Brady was on the sideline looking over, and there's one coach going, and there's another coach going. And even though they might not realize they're competing with your bandwidth.
Yeah.
And if you got to have focus, and that's to me, it's a shame, because there's a lot of coaches out there selling. In my mind, was it blue sky maybe? Oh, you're going to get rich quick, and you ain't getting rich. I mean, I've been doing this thing since 1999, and I've made money, but I haven't had a year where I've doubled or tripled income before. But that to me isn't getting rich. I haven't went from this to $20 million.
Sure.
And I just think there's too many people out there looking for that, and they're trying to find it. So that's my big thing, is to get tighter knit, is to say, you know what? Like, I wanted to have an event a couple years ago that had 200-300 people at it. And now I'm like, you know what? I want an event that has 10 at it.
Yeah.
That we got 10 of us. We're on a freaking island in the middle of Fiji, and we're locked in a room until we leave with the exact plan of what the next 3 months looks like.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, thank you for hanging out with me. I know we got to get going. If you were to leave us with one word, I believe in simplicity. I think there's a lot of wisdom in being simple. So if you were to give one word for people to let resonate coming from Matt Plapp, what would that one word be?
Visibility.
Visibility.
Visibility, because the reason most of us, in my mind, every business, this country club we're at, that golf course, the restaurants, your business, my business, the thing that's going to help us more is that the more people know us, because every human has something to offer. The more people that see what you have to offer, the more it resonates with them. So I think most of us aren't visible enough.
True that. Well, thank you guys. You heard it. Let's get visible. Thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Cool. Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Peace.